I feel very strongly about the need for us to embrace comprehensively the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So strong have I felt about it that I can recall when I was president. I recall that I had been invited to address the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, as is customarily done during the ceremonial opening of the Parliament. And I felt it was a golden opportunity to both inform and instruct, and to advise, more importantly, given the fact that even though I am president of the country of Trinidad and Tobago at the time, the person who is responsible for the general affairs of the country is the Prime Minister. And I recall telling the Assembly that comprised of both parliamentary elected officials and of course other officials, the opposition. I recall indicating to them that I felt so strongly about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that I felt what they ought to do was to throw away their political manifestos that each party has and to adopt wholesale the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as a roadmap for true and real national development, because it dealt with every facet of the existence of the average citizen, whether it be moving from poverty, whether we're talking about health, whether we're talking about women empowerment, whether we're talking about children's well-being, climate action, whether we're talking about all the issues of social vulnerability, environmental vulnerability, all those things are captured by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, they were quite aghast. Some of them at the time didn't know, in my view, based on the expression, what I was talking about. But people are going to accept that the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are laudable goals, they are achievable. But what is required is political will. What is required is having the type of corporate, private and public consensus and collaboration to address the issues in every society with a view to solving those problems and challenges that the average citizen is facing. The problem, though, with the 17 development goals, though, is that politicians need, in my humble view, to know themselves. They need to invoke the voice of conscience. And most of all, they need to appreciate that as a politician, you are the servant of the people, and the people are not your servants. So I think, all in all, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are goals that we need to embrace holistically and realistically and emphatically. Perhaps, of course, at this point in time, the most important of them all is climate change. And that goal of climate action, goal number 30, the Sustainable Development Goal number 13, coupled with 14, life underwater, life on land, goal 15, I think when you recognize what is taking place environmentally, it is impacting on every facet of human life. When you look at, for example, the United Nations not too long ago had a survey done through WHO linking the increased heart attacks to, in fact, the egregious vulnerabilities that come with climate change. So in terms of yields, in terms of food production, a lot of countries are unable to have the kind of food integrity and security that they ought to have because there is no water. The ravages of the radical movement of the climate, where dry season is becoming rainy season and rainy season is becoming dry. Where Infrastructures in cities are literally washed away by raging floods that never occurred before. You know, so I always tell people, what is the use of driving a Mercedes-Benz? What is the use of driving a Toyota if you're going to be driving it in the years to come in 12 inches of salt water? Because again, we are talking about the rise of the sea level rise, where there's massive erosion of land space. And therefore, in fact, invariably, people will begin to fight for borders and land. Look what's happening in the Pacific, where certain islands have disappeared, where the physical integrity of states are now in jeopardy. Are we going to say that the state in Maldives, 100 years from now, will be under the sea? No, we have to arrest that problem. And small island development states are the ones who are suffering the most. But no one is listening, in real terms. No one. Because when you consider in terms of even in terms of the economics, can we truly say that International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are addressing the issues in real terms of small island development states brought on by climate action? That is why, in fact, I have been a very strong advocate. I've been going all over the world in the past few years advocating an international environmental court, an IEC, that will deal exclusively with transnational misfeasance when it comes to our environment. Of course, I know, in fact, we have the Sea Tribunal. But I feel, for example, that there is need for a particular court to deal with transgressions that are intergenerational, intragenerational, and basically falling outside the sovereign territory of many countries. People must be held accountable for engaging in the massive carbon emissions that are taking place. That is why, in fact, throughout my life, my official life, I have been trying to support and encourage groups that are in the fight for climate change. At the moment, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, I am the patron of a group called CZIT, Carbon Zero Institute of Trinidad and Tobago, and we have been going to the schools to engage them on the urgency of climate action in terms of eradicating carbon emissions. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to tell them, save your world, because your older generation have not done a very good job. So this is why, in fact, as I said, I'm a very strong advocate of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and this is why also I feel an organization like FOPAL that basically is pushing a philosophy of conscience, where in fact the voice of conscience that lies within all of us would be listened to. Because if leaders, in fact, for example, listen to their conscience, they will do what is right and condemn what is wrong. If people, for example, listen to their conscience, they will not be sycophants to their political parties and political ideas. They will be strong enough to say, I support my political party, but that is wrong. I support my political party because they're doing right. And it wouldn't be a case of contradictions where intelligent people are now looking at wrong and calling it right, and looking at right and calling it wrong. And to my mind, that represents a crisis in our personal and collective conscience. I recall, in fact, in an almost facetious way, I remember telling persons that when I see how educated professional persons are responding to wrong, are responding to crises and responding to problems in our society, I said, I think we have reached a stage where, in fact, we have intelligent, educated people now learning to be stupid. Yes, learning to be stupid. So it means, for example, that maybe our education system is one, for example, that needs addressing universally. Because we are producing a lot of spineless men and women. Not like before. Our universities that were in fact boiling points in the 60s and 70s and 80s of progressive ideas and philosophies have now gone dormant. What is taking place? And at the end of the day, in fact, it is requesting and demanding a holistic education system that creates better men and better women. Not greater men and greater women. Because when you educate, I always tell persons that, education is not to make you a greater man and woman in the eyes of men and women. It's to make you a better person. So you can do great things. So you can do exceptional things.